Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan, coming to you from the National Weather Service through a unique partnership with Alaska Public Media. It is Sunday, February 5th, 2023, and if you'd like additional weather information on top of what I give you here this evening, you can go to weather.gov, and this is the National Weather Service's online presence. It'll bring you to a map of the continental U.S. You just point and click anywhere on this map. It'll pull up forecast and any relevant watches, warnings, or advisories with additional information on top of that. Across the continental U.S., relatively quiet after the big cold blast that came through New England Friday, Saturday. That has since lifted and rotated out, but we still have a scattering of winter weather advisories across the Intermountain West and extending back here into the Sierra Nevada of California. We have winter storm warnings for a foot or two of snow, especially above 7,000 feet, which is relatively small considering they had some storms, a series of storms at times bringing 2-3 times those amounts. So it's been a rather active pattern across the West here for the past month. And February 5th is National Weather Person's Day, and I just want to extend that well wish to my coworkers who are meteorologists and all of our support staff, the IT people, the electronics technicians, the administrative staff. And this also extends to the private sector, the people you see on commercial TV giving you the weather, or for the military that work in the military and do weather operations there. So happy National Weather Person's Day, February 5th. And looking at Alaska headlines, winter weather warnings continue. Winter storm warnings up there along the northwest Arctic coast. Wind chills as cold as 65 below zero, with blowing snow and localized blizzard conditions. Blowing snow will continue along west side of the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, though not quite as intense as what they're seeing up there along the northwest coast. And then winter weather advisories for areas of the southwest and eastern Kenai here through this evening, and then overnight into mid-morning Monday for the northern panhandle along the Haines and Klondike highways. And looking at some of the images here from across Alaska on the FAA webcams. Up at Point Lay, blowing snow, very cold temperature, air temperature at 27 below zero, but we have wind chills that are at times down around 60, 65 below zero, and it's a ground blizzard there. You can see that blowing snow with winds gusting well over 30 miles an hour. Further southward, there has been some blowing snow and lighter accumulations of snow around King Salmon and Dillingham this Sunday afternoon and early evening. A winter weather advisory continues there until 7 p.m. with some snow and fog. And then as we go up the coast there, Kodiak reporting light rain and fog, 39 degrees in the early afternoon. Whittier seeing, though, some steadier snow and fog, a temperature at 32 degrees. And looking at where we have various warnings and advisories. First, the winter storm warning up here along the northwest coast, including Wainwright, Point Lay, those areas seeing wind chills as cold as 60 to 65 below, along with blowing snow. Not so much in the way of falling snow, but that blowing snow and those strong winds creating those dangerously cold wind chills. We still have some blowing snow expected here, western Seward Peninsula, and as well as for St. Lawrence Island, and that's in effect till 6 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And then as we go into the central interior, Bettles, Tanana, we're anticipating mainly blowing snow that could impact some of the highway summits here in the central interior, including the upper Koyukuk Basin. And then we have a wind advisory in effect for the eastern Alaska range, including Isabel Pass, where south winds could gust as high as 55 miles an hour through early Monday morning. And then further south and west, winter weather advisory for the area around Bristol Bay until 7 p.m. this Sunday evening. The eastern Kenai and the west and northern areas of Prince William Sound, the eastern Chugach Mountains, until 9 o'clock this evening. Some of the heavier snow will fall as that low rides northeastward along the east side of the Kenai Peninsula as much as 20 inches of snow could fall near Whittier Tunnel. Otherwise, areas like Turnagain Pass on up to the west side of Prince William Sound, 7 to 14 inches of snow with that system. And then finally, in the northern panhandle along the Klondike and Haines highways, as much as 3 to 7 inches of snow could fall, with the greatest concentration up there around White Pass for tonight and early on Monday morning. So satellite imagery shows the circulation of that low near Kodiak Island and the moisture in the frontal band lifting northeastward that's going to be pushing across the panhandle tonight. And then back to the west, a scattering of mixed rain and snow showers here along and just south of the Aleutians, and then up to the far north, some very cold air continues to sit there up along the north slope. We've had temperatures this afternoon struggling to get much above 35 below, 40 below in a few cases. In fact, New Exit was down to 44 below for the state's low temperature earlier today. And we don't expect those temperatures to budge much here as we go through the night and into the day tomorrow. So again, satellite imagery showing the primary low sitting here now over Kodiak Island. There's a little energy back in the mid-levels. And this low is going to weaken as it comes northeastward, but then another little weaker secondary low may try to take shape near Bristol Bay. But overall, these systems over the next couple of days will gradually weaken. So here is the low down near 960 millibars this Sunday afternoon. And with it, strong winds right around it. We do have some storm force winds circulating around this low, especially at the entrance of Cook Inlet. And as this low lifts northeastward, it will gradually begin to weaken as we get into Monday, but the front will push inland through the panhandle. And with the front, we do expect the potential for some snow showers, especially Monday night and into early Tuesday across areas of the panhandle. Some pretty hefty rains along the southern tier of this as we go from the southern panhandle up into the British Columbia coast. And then back to the west, just kind of a train of weaker low pressure systems and troughiness that lags. We continue to see this trough along the northwest side of the state, and along this is where we have the gusty winds and blowing snow with localized blizzard conditions continuing tonight into at least Monday morning along areas of the northwest coast, especially in the vicinity of Point Lay there. And then Monday afternoon, this is kind of this secondary low back toward Bristol Bay. And then by the time we get into Tuesday, we still have a weak low pressure system there in the northwestern Gulf, trough extending northward, kind of the remnants of that occluded front lifting northward from today. So temperatures overnight above freezing through the southern two-thirds of the panhandle, below freezing western Kenai and areas as you get from especially Anchorage, Cordova, northward on up into the interior. High temperatures, lower 40s, the outer coastal areas of the panhandle. Back up near or just above freezing in Anchorage come Monday afternoon. And then as we go into Tuesday morning, temperatures have moderated a little bit with that flow coming in off of the Gulf. And lows generally near or above freezing in the panhandle, and daytime highs back up in the lower to middle 40s there from Sitka down through Craig and Metlakatla. Back toward the west, we expect temperatures to be a little cooler. And the coldest air in the state is going to reside here along and north of the Brooks Range, the North Slope, Arctic coast. Lows Monday morning will be down into the lower 40s below zero here at places like Dead Horse eastward through Kaktovik, the Barter Islands. And then back toward the west, even the western Seward Peninsula is seeing temperatures well below zero. Daytime highs staying in the 20s, even 30 below zero there across the North Slope and Arctic coast. Tuesday morning lows, again, some 40 below readings possible up there. Again, toward the east central portions of the Arctic coast, even 21 below, say at Shishmaref, and then off toward the south, even readings still below zero near and south of the Yukon River, though they may try to come back up a little bit into the mid-teens at Fairbanks by Tuesday. Now, along the Arctic coast, we anticipate temperatures to be cooling. I'm saying the southwest coast, we expect readings in the upper Yukon Valley cooling down into the single digits below zero. Still above freezing, the tip of the Alaska Peninsula westward through the eastern Aleutians. High temperatures Monday afternoon. You'll have to get down further south toward Chiknik westward before temperatures are above freezing. The interior, single digits above zero to near 10 above, including Bettles and only 5 above Imanak. And then for Tuesday morning lows, I think a few more sub-zero readings, especially through the lower Yukon Delta, as well as the middle upper Kuskokwim Basin. And then back out here toward the west. Temperatures even a little near or a bit below freezing in through the eastern Aleutians. And temperatures Tuesday afternoon, again, single digits up through the southwest interior, above freezing in the Aleutian chain. Temperatures should average near or below normal through the middle of the month. It could even be a bit colder than that, though.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Let's take a look now at your aviation weather if you have a flight planned either on Monday or Tuesday. Main weather feature in the mid-levels of the atmosphere will be this trough of low pressure aloft here over the southwest Bristol Bay area. We have a low this Sunday afternoon that's coming up across the east side of Kodiak Island. It's going to come up to about Seward, across the central areas of Cook Inlet, and then kind of weaken as another low redevelops briefly out over Bristol Bay, and then secondary, third, tertiary low just kind of takes shape in the northwestern corner of the Gulf. It'll be a weaker system, but nevertheless, IFR conditions, intercoastal mountains, southern panhandle up across the northern Gulf Coast, the Seward Peninsula, I should say the Kenai Peninsula, west arm of the Alaska Range, and then back out over the central Bering by Monday afternoon. IFR conditions persisting in the same areas, maybe not quite the aerial extent. Very cold air continuing across the north slope areas of the Arctic and northwest coast. Daytime temperatures not getting much above 25, 35 below zero. Those are the air temperatures. And then going into Tuesday morning, we expect some IFR conditions up through the middle Yukon Valley, south side of the Brooks Range. Still persisting, though, IFR there across Wrangell, St. Elias, down through Yakutat, northern Panhandle, intercoastal mountains. And Tuesday afternoon, we still see some areas of IFR in the northern Panhandle extending westward across the northern Gulf to the around Portage, and then also up here along the east-southeast side of the Brooks Range. So if you have any pass concerns up in the far north, Anatuvik Pass as well as Adigan Pass will see VFR conditions on Monday. There in the Brooks Range. Further south and west, though, the west arm of the Alaska Range, IFR at Lake Clark and Merrill on Monday. Rainy Pass may see a period of MVFR early in the day, but giving way to IFR conditions. Same thing at Windy Pass, MVFR giving way to IFR. Isabel, generally MVFR conditions should prevail from Isabel eastward through Mentasta Pass across the eastern portion of the Alaska Range. Further south and west, Tanita Pass, generally MVFR conditions are anticipated on Monday, whereas Portage will be socked in with IFR conditions anywhere there, especially eastern Chugach and along areas of Prince William Sound. And then farther east, the far northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White will remain IFR during the day on Monday. Freezing levels, the surface freezing line extends from the westward central Aleutians out over the lower Bering, cutting across the Alaska Peninsula on up along the Kenai Peninsula in through the northern Gulf Coast, and then back in through the central intercoastal mountains and channels there. And freezing levels aloft bump upwards above 2,000 feet in the southern Panhandle, above 4,000 feet Haida Gwaii, and just over 6,000 feet off of Vancouver. Greatest threat for icing, some moderate icing will be around Prince William Sound associated with that one low. We'll also have precipitation going on with a frontal band with a southwest flow of moisture, stronger winds aloft, pushing that up along the coastal mountains. So pretty good area there of some moderate icing in clouds above 6,000 feet where you have the thicker precipitation-bearing cloud layer. And then looking at the upper level jet stream winds, 30,000 feet, we have a broad trough of low pressure from eastern Russia across the southwest Bristol Bay area with 120 knot jet max coming in from the southwest there up toward the British Columbia coast. And then at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, we still have those two general low circulations, troughiness from the Bering into the southwest mainland, and then ahead of it, southwest flow out over the Gulf with the strongest winds coming up in through western central Canada, areas of British Columbia and Alberta. And then finally at 3,000 feet, we still have that low circulation in the southwest near Bristol Bay, a broad 40 to as high as 50 knot southwesterly wind flow out over the Gulf. And then taking a look at the turbulence in the area, a couple areas. In the far north, some very cold temperatures hugging their Arctic coast and the North Slope. Winds out of the northeast and north through the Bering Strait. We expect some moderate turbulence there, the lower Chukchi Sea through the Bering Strait. And areas also extending along the Yukon, just north of the Yukon River, south of the Brooks Range. And then another broad area of moderate turbulence possible everywhere from the central and eastern Aleutians and from St. Paul down through across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, the entrance of Cook Inlet, along the Kenai coast, outer areas of Prince William Sound, and then extending back down along the west and southern portions of the Panhandle surface to 6,000 feet. So that wraps up your flight weather. If you do have a flight plan, make sure you check the latest conditions and forecast. And if you are able to get off the ground, have a safe flight.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, oh, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business
You can
that
remember
with
when.
the new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellite is launched, see, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect. Yes. And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before. Okay. Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care? Okay. You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what, though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey. But they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job. And it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, that's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough it has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite. But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and more. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5. The new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do. But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. It's now time for our marine weather segment. We start with the sea ice. The ice is extensive throughout the north. Bitter cold. Wind chills as cold as 60, 65 below zero along the northwest coast, especially in the vicinity of Wainwright and Point Lay. AKwx seeing some Polinias there just to the west that have opened up along the shore steadfast ice, as well as in areas of Kotzebue Sound and down here on the east side of Norton Sound. Brisk winds will continue out of the northeast and north, coming down through the lower Chukchi Sea and through the Bering Strait here, at least through the day on Monday. And then further south, winds will have a northerly component, so the ice could slowly be drifting a little further southward, especially there past St. Matthew early in the week. And with some little colder temperatures coming back in, we may see a little more ice formation along areas of Bristol Bay as well as Kuskokwim Bay. But here across the southeast, we have a frontal system overnight coming in with some snow, especially in the north. Winds will initially be south, upwards of 25 knots on Monday, and could see some gusts as high as 40-knot gales there in Lynn Canal with waves of 5 feet, 12-foot waves there, Dixon Entrance. And then the outer Gulf Coast, winds will be out of the southwest to west at 20 knots and waves anywhere from 14, 15 feet, Craig up to Gustavus, and as high as 17 to 19 feet, especially west of Yakutat. Then on Tuesday, winds come down across the inner channels out of the southeast and south, 15 knots, waves a few feet, though as high as 7 feet down toward Ketchikan, Metlakatla, especially there in Dixon Entrance. And then the outer Gulf Coast, generally south-southwest winds 15 to 20 knots and waves 11 to 12 feet. Along the northwest Gulf Coast, winds not as strong as what they were on Sunday. Still 35-knot gales off of the Kenai with 21-foot waves. South winds to 25 knots, Prince William Sound, 6-foot waves. And the lower half of Cook Inlet will see winds turn westerly to 20 knots with 6-foot waves, as there's going to be a weak low circulation here on the east side of the Kenai, western Prince William Sound. And then for Tuesday, winds will be generally out of the west across lower Cook Inlet and off the Kenai to 25 knots, waves 4 to 7 feet lower Cook Inlet and as much as 10 to 12 feet off the Kenai coast. But easterly winds to 10 knots with 2-foot waves, Prince William Sound, variable winds there, upper Cook Inlet. And then across Kodiak Island on Monday, look for southwest winds 25 to 30 knots on the west side of the Gulf, including areas of the North Pacific, with waves 13 to 15 feet. From Bristol Bay down toward Cold Bay on the Bering side, winds will be out of the west 20 to 25 knots. And then for Tuesday, winds across much of the region just generally westerly at 25 to 30 knots, 5-foot waves Shelikof Strait. 13 to 15 feet as you get into the open waters of the North Pacific and Western Gulf, and 8 to 10 feet there on the Bering side where you have ice-free water. And across the Aleutian chain for Monday, winds will generally be out of the northwest to 30 knots across the eastern and central Aleutians, with waves running 15 to 17 feet away from the shelter of the island. On the North Pacific side, 12 to 15 feet on the Bering side. And by Tuesday, winds try to turn back more around toward the south-southwest around 20-25 knots throughout the eastern and central Aleutians, though picking back up to 40-knot winds around a little more compact low west of Adak. That would be Tuesday afternoon, and waves generally 9 to 11 feet on the North Pacific side, 7 to 9 feet on the Bering side. And then finally, as we get up through along the west and southwest coast, a northerly wind flow across the ice could cause the ice still to shift further south of St. Matthew here early in the week. Northwest winds in the ice-free areas there around St. Paul with waves of 9 feet. And on Tuesday, winds come down a little bit. Still a northerly component, 20 knots or so. Northwest winds there in Norton Sound and south of St. Lawrence Island. And then variable winds in the vicinity of St. Paul with waves of 6 feet. Finally, along the Arctic coast, east to northeast winds 5 to 10 knots. So lighter winds here, central eastern Arctic coast, but still winds upwards of 35 to 30 knots there, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, south through the Bering Strait. Still areas of blowing snow and that ice shifting. But along the Arctic coast, we anticipate winds to be east-northeast, 10 to 15 knots, and still coming down out of the northeast, shifting northwesterly around 25 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea and Bering Strait. So that wraps up our show for this Sunday evening. Thank you for watching, and join me again tomorrow night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.